First off, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining today and welcome to the Rethink Finance panel discussion here today. My name's Chris. I'm the head of channel and partnerships at Chaser, and I'll be moderating today's session. Just before we kick off, I'll take you through some quick housekeeping in relation to today. You'll actually be emailed all the webinar recording either this afternoon or tomorrow, so there's no need to take super extensive notes today. We'll also be running a Q&A session at the end of the session today, so at about 11:45. So please, as we're running through the panel today, please just drop any questions you have in the Q&A box on Zoom, not in the chat box, so specifically in the Q&A box, and then we can pick them up in that way. And if you could let me know which panelist you'd like your question to be directed to, I can ensure you hear from the right person in place there. So please go ahead and use the Q&A box as we run through the session today. So what I'll do now to kick off is I'd like to hand over to our panel to introduce themselves and give a bit of background on themselves and the business that they work in. So can I go to Mark at New Statesman? Good morning, Mark, and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks, Chris. Mark Moore, Finance Director for New Statesman Media Group, which is operates across the UK, sort of North America and Asia. So we have publications, we're a marketing business, we run events, I'm really excited to join the panel today. Thanks.
And thank you for joining us today, Mark. Really appreciate it. And next, let's go to Catherine at BDO. Good morning, Catherine.
Morning, Chris. Thanks. So I'm Catherine O'Carroll from BDO, which is an accountancy practice. So I work in our technology advisory service area, really focused on helping clients to optimize and transition to cloud finance and accounting systems.
Fantastic. And thank you again, Catherine, for joining our panel this morning.
Thanks, Chris.
And let's go to James at Accounts IQ. Good morning, James.
Morning. So as a bit of an introduction, because we're differing from the original roster, I'm James Taylor. I'm here instead of Darren. I work as a pre-sales consultant at Accounts IQ. So I see prospects with problems, I see them become customers, and I watch them grow into Accounts IQ. Day to day, I knit the sales team into various other functions at Accounts IQ, and I've been here for a number of years and previously worked at other large software houses as well.
Super, and thank you for joining, James, and thank you for stepping in at the last minute on this frontier. I'm really looking to hear some of your insight from your experience today, so really excited to have you on board. And last but not least, can we go to Sonia at Chaser? Good morning, Sonia.
Good morning, thank you. I'm Sonia Dore, I'm CEO of Chaser. So we're an accounts receivables automation SaaS platform, and we essentially help companies get paid sooner by automating invoice binders. So happy to be here today. Thank you.
And thank you, Sonia. Thank you for joining, and great to introduce everybody this morning. So in terms of today's session, what will it look like? Well, we'll be discussing three core topics today, and I'll be posing a number of questions to our panelists today. These specifically will be focused on strategy changes, digital transformation, and actually, interestingly, Accounts IQ have recently put a survey out across their customer base, and 70% of respondents actually came back saying they were interested in getting a better understanding of digital transformation. So a good topic to really explore today and get some insight from our panelists. And then finally, recovering from a crisis. So what plans and processes are being put in place to actually help businesses come out of the crisis in a better situation ultimately. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session at the end today. So without further ado, I think we should probably kick off this morning. So any questions, as I mentioned, please post them in the Q&A session, in this Q&A section, should I say, and we'll revert to those at the end. So let's have a look at the first theme that we covered off on the prior slide there, which is challenges and strategy changes. So what would be great to do today, I guess, would be to explore some challenges you've each faced, and what changes you've actually had to make to your strategy during the pandemic to kind of help keep your business afloat. So if I could go to Mark at New Statesman first. Mark, I know that like a lot of publishing companies, I expect there must have been significant changes to deal with last year, such as a reduction in subscription income. What kind of things have you had to implement at your end?
Yes, our sector, particularly print advertising and events, have suffered badly. During the past 12 months. Really, this has accelerated our digital transformation, which has been based on sort of innovation and sort of new product development and emerging technologies. For example, we moved to a lead monitor product which uses sort of native content, microsites, and dashboards to deliver lead generation for clients instead of them just using traditional advertising marketing methods. And also, we've had to move into virtual events pretty quickly, to replace our live events, which we did a lot of marketing and conferences. But our core digital and print subscriptions actually grew by 20% last year, so they've actually held up really well.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. No, very good. And what would you say, what would you put down that 20% increase to?
I think we've invested, in our sort of website, really. Our products, it's not just a print publication, which is, you can buy into Smes, so it comes in the post. There's, online content, podcasts online, etc. And, we've invested significantly in rebranding the website. So yeah.
No, it's good to see. Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. That's very useful. And if I could go to Catherine now. So, Catherine, from your perspective, your area of focus is advising a large number of SMEs. What sort of changes have you seen across the board? And have you seen many businesses making kind of similar changes like this?
Yeah, I'd probably expand a little bit more on what Mark said, really. Digital transformation is definitely accelerated for a number of reasons. We deal with a number of different businesses, different sectors, different size, and they all have different challenges. But ultimately, that digital transformation piece has been quite critical for various reasons, whether that's supporting remote working through the last sort of year and a half, through to driving better, more accurate and timely financial information to help make decisions at the right time. Because again, I think through the last 12 months, there's definitely been businesses exposed in respect of not having that information, to make critical decisions at the right time.
Very good. Thank you, Catherine. And Sonia, I know that in the face of changing business priorities, that Chaser actually launched a debt collection service. Could you share why we as a company decided to do that from a strategic perspective?
Sure, Chris. There's several reasons why, but predominantly, Chaser's predominantly focused always, late payments have always been prevalent, and it's an increasingly awkward problem for businesses during the pandemic. And many businesses were obviously put under a huge strain in terms of cash flow. And we knew, based on conversations with our customers, that businesses were likely struggling with cash flow as well. So it's not just our customers that were struggling, but also their customers are struggling. So it means that, as simple as chasing customers until they pay, there's always that kind of awkwardness as well with regards to chasing debts. So when your customers are struggling to pay as well, the last thing you want is to aggressively chase for payment. So we felt, based on conversations with our customers and our research, that traditional debt collection services were not fit for purpose in this market that required a lot more sensitivity. And so we launched a debt collection service that was, in our view, more aligned with our company values and much more friendly. And off the back of that, helping our customers essentially get paid through that service. Essentially, that's why. And it's actually been quite successful to date. People are quite happy with our approach, because we are making sure that we don't damage the brand reputation of the businesses that we're working with and those customer relationships as well.
Absolutely. I think that word there, that sensitivity word, is quite a prevalent one at this moment in time, isn't it, Sonia? So really good insight there. Thank you. And let me go to James at Accounts IQ. So James, from a software tech company, I imagine, or you will spend a lot of time engaging with your customer base. What's the kind of main challenges your customers are telling you about, and what changes have you implemented at your end?
Yeah, so I see this from the perspective of the prospects and from our existing customers. So from the prospects perspective, some still weren't using cloud systems, so it's been really tough for them. Working independently on a desktop system that's not linked. We had a wave of clients coming to us early on in the pandemic saying, how can we migrate and get onto something that can bring us together as a finance team? For our existing customers, it's also been a big change. There's been changes in process, setting up extra functions within Accounts IQ to help collaborate with the wider organization. So, for example, we no longer walk up to each other's desks and chat with each other. We do this over Zoom and Teams, and we've all got used to this. Well, the finance equivalent of this exists too. We no longer leave purchase orders on the desks of managers. Instead, we're raising them in the system. And the great thing about that is they're then raised against budget, routed through to an app for approval. So we get to see that purchase commitment, etc. So there's some changes there. Something else that we've all seen is the psychological shift of managing the job too, and being at home all the time. There's a lot of moving parts to consider when it comes to this change and the financial changes. And with that comes a decent amount of stress and anxiety. So I do hope that in all laying it out using the tech has helped our client base in visualizing that.
Very, very insightful there, James. Thank you. And I guess going back to that point you mentioned before from a prospect perspective, from historic systems moving into the cloud, what do you think the key apprehensions of businesses moving from incumbent systems to cloud are, and what would you say about that?
I think it's just been a time thing for them up to this point. Years back, it used to be that they would have concerns over security, but really with our economies of scale and the fact that we provide security solutions across the board, as soon as we start having that conversation, that part of it is okay. I think it was just the time when should we do this? It was probably on the roadmap for those who were on desktop systems anyway, but this has just really been the catalyst and has made sure that people have moved onto it, and it's really prompted them to update systems.
Super, brilliant. Thank you, James, and thank you all for your responses there. Some real great insight across the board there. I'm going to move to that second point now, which actually is interesting, ties nicely into digital transformation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out an excerpt from Accenture's recent report. And just bear with me for a couple of moments here while I read this out, but it's quite some interesting findings here. But it states only 34% of finance tasks are currently automated, whilst it's estimated that 60 to 80% of backward-looking accountancy activity can be automated. This can reinvent the CFOs of tomorrow by providing automation of mundane tasks, richer data sets, and access to sophisticated models and visualization tools, which can combine to make finance one of the most value-adding departments. This will assist in the natural evolution of CFOs from accountants to analyzers to strategic advisors. So I guess the question for my panel is, particularly with teams working remotely, digital transformation has become more and more prevalent. And it'd be great to hear about the transformation in yours and your clients' businesses throughout the pandemic. So again, if I could come to Mark on this first question here, I imagine the shift in income streams must have required implementing some more digitalized processes at New Statesman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the business is changing very quickly. People that we hire now as a business, developers, back end, front end developers, designers, data journalists, data engineers. For example, we're adopting, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. We've developed a robot that writes content for our products from our data sets. So, we're using writing automated content there. That's an example. But business is no longer, for example, has any physical servers. We're operating in the cloud. We're a cloud business. We use Microsoft 365, Salesforce for our CRM, we're actually using SharePoint, and even we've moved all our finance systems into the cloud, automated that process, as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And I guess the economies of scale that you're generating from having all these processes in the cloud and having them all kind of in sync, and everybody in the business to be able to access and utilize in any place and anywhere is helping the business ultimately
Absolutely,
moving
yes.
forward.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Thank you, Mark. And Catherine, over to you. I guess, what are you advising your clients to do in this space? What would be your top piece of advice, or the most common transformation you see your clients are going through?
Yeah, I mean, we see clients at sort of different stages of their sort of digital adoption. Cloud-based accounting systems are probably a lot more accessible than they used to be. You can find a lot of detail out online, and we get clients that effectively select and sign up to accounting platforms, but haven't necessarily thought beyond that, how to really optimize, through improvement of processes, using additional tools such as like Chaser and OCR data recognition. So really sort of trying to drive efficiencies and trying to reduce sort of manual process. We do see some businesses taking on the technology but still using it in a similar way to they used to. So it's an opportunity to really look to change how they're working, through to clients that have quite a detailed infrastructure already, but very disconnected legacy systems, and trying to sort of see what we can potentially I guess understanding what those requirements are initially, what gaps they've got, looking at alternative solutions and helping clients to sort of migrate, but also looking at individual aspects of their current infrastructure and what can potentially be adjusted or integrated better, as Mark said, through APIs, etc. So there's a number of different ways that we can advise and assist clients with what effectively they've currently got and where they want to be, to further support strategy and business growth.
Fantastic. And I think that's super interesting, because it's not just the deployment of the technology in that space. There's a process that intertwines all this technology together, which you're seeing more and more of at this moment in time, which is indicative of the market, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the bit, you're looking at sort of the core functionality of an accounting platform, but it's the additional, add-on applications that can further enhance, the functionality and further provide those benefits to a finance team.
Superb. Excellent. Thank you, Catherine. And James, have you seen more businesses turn to Accounts IQ during the pandemic? How are you able to help on this frontier?
Yeah, and I suppose what tools have helped. So I suppose it depends who you're asking in the finance team. CFOs, they've been asking for the tools and reports to service board requirements. If we're looking to change our strategy or reduce headcount, what are the key facts there? So we need those reports. We need clear reporting to make those informed decisions. From the financial controller's perspective, many have been looking to knit together the finance function in this new environment. Workflow approvals, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have the ability to leave paperwork on desks anymore, so that's all been done digitally, and we're moving to that paperless system. Creating API links to third-party systems like a Salesforce or an EPOS system has been really popular. That means the data entry can be done in the background. And things like adding budgets into the system and reviewing overheads, of course, so that we can be as frugal as possible during trying times. And then I suppose finally, from the finance staff who are usually interested in productivity tools, it could be because of a reduced headcount. And we've been encouraging the use of like automated journals, smart bank recs, and OCR automation to speed all of that data entry up and make it a lot more scalable. It becomes a lot easier to manage at that stage, and is usually a much cheaper option than manual data entry.
Brilliant. Thank you, James, and some real good insight there in terms of some of those processes. And Sonia, I guess from your perspective, how is this affecting the payment space? Have you seen that digital payment processes or automation are able to help?
So yeah, for sure, I would see there's definitely now more than ever a compelling case for moving towards an innovative digital first cashless society, as I would call it. And I've seen such a range of tools now available on the market for CFOs to streamline the payments process. And I think the Accenture report is right. So despite the time savings that they can bring, I would imagine that the adoption of these tools is low. I can say that from my marketing background, typically I would see my research would suggest that finance teams simply are not always aware of the tools that are available to make things more streamlined for them in regards to payments and payment processes and how they can get the most benefits from them. I also think that there's probably some who might be put off by the operational change management required in order to change the way that they've always done things in the past. And that's really up to us from a customer success perspective to really help these businesses get through to the other side. Because adjusting operational processes is not easy for any business. So I think that's probably why from a payments changing perspective, there's low adoption there. But definitely moving towards cashless would be predominant. I think as well, some businesses, they have some privacy concerns. Consumers definitely have privacy concerns with regards to digital payments, whereas others are freely using their mobile phones now to just tap and pay. So yeah, introducing digital transformation and automation, it can create huge savings for businesses. That would be my take on the payments side.
Perfect. No, that's excellent. Thank you, Sonia, for your insight there, and some great takeaways, I think, from that point there. We're going to move on to question 3 now, and there's or point 3, should I say? And there's a number of kind of questions within here which I'll pose to the panel today. But we've talked about digital transformation. We've talked about the challenges, and actually, what I'd like to focus on a little bit now is looking at actually recovering from a crisis. So we're coming out to the other end of the pandemic at the minute. In terms of helping your business to recover financially from the crisis, what I'd be interested in is getting an understanding in terms of what are your plans, what do you plan to implement either this year or next year to kind of support this? So, for example, is there any technology that's been implemented that you're implementing internally or focus on implementing across to your client base? So, Catherine, I know, again, as we mentioned before, you work with a considerable volume of businesses, both SME and mid-market size. What do you expect to be implementing with clients over the forthcoming months and years even?
I suppose going back to the previous point, depending on the client and where they are in their sort of journey, really sort of getting them to, I suppose, focus on more of the sort of outputs and the management reports and the financial performance of the business, rather than thinking purely about sort of data entry, reconciliations. If the system is, optimized, if controls are in place, if data is being, captured on a more real-time basis, ultimately the focus then of the business is more about, the financial performance, looking at, the forecasting, using some of those tools, to help with cash flow aspects, looking at, future obligations, particularly if, they've taken out loans and things like that through the pandemic. So really sort of seeing what the impact of that is going to be over time based on how they're currently performing. I think that's going to be quite key for businesses to see what they can get from the system. Ultimately, good data in is going to be good data out.
Fantastic. No, that's super useful. And I think, have you seen anything specifically you've seen your clients put in place that's helped kind of really speed up the recovery from your experience?
I think, like I said, really sort of looking at, that aspect of, really getting the systems to do more for you, adapting, updating processes. I think Sonia mentioned it before about, getting people engaged in it and really sort of, change management has been quite a big piece over the last sort of, 12 months, new ways of working. I think really ultimately that's going to be the key, is just to make sure that, the focus is more on the financial performance and what information they can gather at the right time to make those informed decisions. So definitely businesses are planning ahead more, and using that data to help underpin those sort of strategic decisions.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And I guess the point I took away there from both yourself and Sonia's comment in the previous one is that kind of awareness within the business. So, you know, all the different components, the people within that finance department having awareness in terms of both from a productivity, but making lives easier ultimately. So we can spend time kind of focusing on the core tasks, which is looking ahead in the forthcoming months in terms of what will add value. So great point. Thank you, Catherine. Mark, it sounds like there's been quite a strategic shift at New Statesman in response to the pandemic, as we've been through before, and you've introduced quite a lot of new technology, and some of the AI stuff you were talking about earlier sounds quite a shift over the past couple of years. I guess, what's your plans moving forwards in the space? Do you plan to keep these in place? I imagine you do, but or do you plan to expand on them even more? What's your thoughts here?
Well, yes, you know, in finance, we're on our automation journey, and we've just implemented Accounts IQ and Chaser in the past sort of 3 to 4 months. So these are starting to, you know, help deliver tangible benefits to us, removing manual processes, and it's helping us get the, you know, efficient use of resources in the business. For example, our new order to payment process in Accounts IQ is helping me deliver cost savings. I can now, you know, quite easily relocate sort of accounts payable transaction processing to one of our subsidiaries in India. Which is allowing me to focus, you know, our core finance team in the UK, you know, to more value-added activities. You know, we've eliminated sort of clunky manual processes. You know, like I said, the finance team can now provide more support to those running a business by providing actionable insights and to help make better decisions.
I think everything you've said there kind of, yeah, that automation kind of piece, having those streamlined processes in place, enabling the business, yourself and your team to kind of make those decisions has been the key point for you there. So that's brilliant insight. Thank you, Mark. And Sonia, I know as a business, Chaser, we've come out of the pandemic doing quite well. Do you plan to keep the changes that we've made over the past kind of 6 to 12 months in place?
Yeah, I would say definitely continue to keep moving forward, I think, is what I would say. So some of the changes in place in terms of introducing debt collection service, implementing the payment portal, we're definitely moving forward with these things. But as you know, you were part of the process, Chris. We've rewritten our vision statement and our mission statement to say that our goal is to help businesses get paid in an efficient and friendly way. So really what we're going to keep doing is look for ways continuously to help businesses recover their cash, and where that might be through credit control as a whole, or through other options, not just invoice chasing. We're going to be looking at the entire journey, credit scoring, payment plans, etc. Just looking for ways to continue to live out to that vision and really help businesses recover their cash. So that's really the direction I would think that Chaser is going to keep going through.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. And James, I imagine you'll have some great insight into the sort of solutions that Accounts IQ clients are implementing to kind of help aid their recovery.
Yeah, so and we've actually adjusted our roadmap at Accounts IQ to meet the new environment. So we're continuing to build new tech for clients and keeping it on the theme of automation. So we've got the OCR and ICR technology that we're building into the purchase ledger, bank feed automation coming into the product, and batch payment improvements and workflows being added in. So there's lots to look forward to there. Outside of that, what's available now to clients, I would say it time and time again, is the reporting element of it. Review your reporting. Can you report on your new strategy and its KPIs and goals? So, are you looking to focus on building up reserves, getting access to loans, expanding into new areas? Are you going to rehire those staff, or are you maybe going to take a different approach in future? Either way, I'd say align your reports, make the use of Power BI or Excel add-in, and start on specific metrics and KPIs to move towards your goals. So really analyze the past using the system and look to the future.
Super, thanks, James, and a great opportunity, I think, for all businesses now to kind of look and deep dive into those kind of KPIs and really kind of plan forward from that perspective there. Good stuff. Next question I'd like to pose to the group is to look at visibility. So my question would be, do you feel you've got sufficient visibility and financial data to know where you stand to be able to accurately forecast and plan for the remainder of 2021? So be keen to understand here what's hindering your visibility or what's actually helped you with it. So James, I know at Accounts IQ, you've just recently surveyed your customers. We talked about digital transformation, the 70% right at the start of today. Are your clients generally feeling confident about where they stand financially?
So I'd say so. We got a great response from the survey, and many highlighted they do need to spend more time in their reports. We do make sure that we review our clients and their strengths and weaknesses on the system periodically. And we find that those who are winning are those who are really visualizing their data, be it through dashboards, reporting, the Excel add-in or Power BI. Alongside that, we do look at all of the coding that goes into the day-to-day entry and make sure that's all up to scratch and relevant. We know that it's inputs versus outputs. So if we're not quite getting the outputs, we have to review the inputs, of course. And on the input side of things, our BI coding, which is our departmental hierarchy, that can really get quite complex. But really spending some time there can start to present answers that really people aren't even asking the questions for. So it's really worthwhile getting the right inputs into the system so that we can be reviewing reports appropriately.
Excellent, thanks, James. And I think kind of refers back, talked about this a little bit today, but the quality of data inputs and actually what's going into those systems is completely prevalent as it was beforehand as well. But good insight there. Thank you, James. Sonia, I know at Chaser prior to the pandemic, we had kind of limited tools in place in terms of visibility, should I say? Do you feel from a CEO's perspective that we've got better visibility now?
Well, two major overhauls at Chaser last year in the second half of the year has been the full implementation of the CRM system. And, we integrated that with our app so that our customer success team and our sales team could essentially understand better what's happening between our customers and then better service them. So that was major overall. But I think in terms of financial visibility, we completely overhauled our billing system last year and implemented ChargeBee, which has been very helpful. Not to do a promotional plug for ChargeBee, but it's definitely given us a lot of insights overall on our customer base and on our financials, and which we've integrated with our accounting system as well. So I would say, yeah, I definitely feel in a more confident position this year with the implementation of those two pieces of software with regards to where we stand as a business financially.
Super, thank you, Sonia. And Catherine, have you been able to find ways to support businesses with this kind of visibilities? And do you have any recommendations from your experience? Sorry, Catherine, I think you're just on mute.
I knew that would happen at some point during this. Apologies. So yeah, I mean, in respect of this, it's part of it is going to be sort of the system, the processes that are in place, really looking at the data sources that the client has available, whether that be down to sort of really granular level to help with the overall sort of reporting structure, capturing that data and being able to present it in such a way that really helps those insights, different segmentations of the business, different divisions, different cost centers. I think what we've seen particularly is businesses looking to tighten controls that are in place, particularly around things like spend, an invoice that you've had to pay, it's committed. A lot of businesses are putting in place things like purchase orders, approval workflows, looking at sort of budgets versus, before decisions are made within the business and really sort of trying to tighten that up. So, ultimately all that drives is really good business information and being able to provide that in a well-structured, meaningful way, helping businesses once they've got the structure. And again, this is something that's developed over time with a business to say, what is it that you really need to understand, what sources of data have you got available, and then ultimately helping to try and delve into those numbers in respect of, how's the business performing, what are their plans for the future, what sort of things need to be put in place. So helping to advise around, the financials and, ultimately the performance of the business. So it's on a multiple level.
Absolutely, and I imagine it's very different business to business across the board here, depending on their experience, their time in terms of trading, their industry type, vertical, etc., etc. So
exactly,
I think it's a tailored operation for every business.
Exactly, and it's bringing those sort of foresights, having experience of lots of different clients in different sectors, and you're sort of seeing and to some degree sort of benchmarking, how certain businesses are performing and what you would expect both from an operational perspective through to sort of financials, KPIs, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. And Mark, is this visibility something you've been able to achieve at New Statesman Media Group?
Yes, our finance system is fully automated and integrated now with our CRM and Chaser application, which we're using with Accounts IQ. So now, in real time, our sales invoices are coming from a CRM and reporting our ledger straight away, and we can start, actively sort of the process of, collecting the cash through Chaser within, minutes of, billing clients from, in our system. Similarly, the control, processing and reporting of our liabilities is more robust. Our working capital is really live and dynamic. It's a better position for us now to manage our short-term sort of cash flows, and again, it's sort of vital to build future projections when we're looking at forecasting. Really, so we've got much more confidence in our sort of base position numbers. So yeah.
Fantastic, thanks, Mark. And I think the big thing I've taken away from there is that insight. So all the tools we've been speaking about today to enable kind of providing this insight across the business holistically. But also, actually, how do we implement them, and how do we implement them for the right people, for the right businesses at the right time, ultimately, in order to give us the best outputs possible from there. So, yeah, some great comments there. Thank you all. I'm going to move to my last question today, and then we'll move on to Q&A after this. But really, to the panel, taking from what you've learned from the pandemic, what would you say would be the main piece of advice you would give to FDs, accountants, CEOs, or any others attending the panel today about how they can aid the business recovery? So Mark, if you don't mind me coming to you again, and if you could just give us your advice, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think for finance to evolve, it must follow a similar path, technology to the business. It can't really sort of be, a back office function that just, gets some investment, the wrong end of the hierarchy there. Automation develops efficient processes and structures, so the business be more agile, be able to react quicker to challenges, and it won't be constrained by poor systems and manual processes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. And James, if I could come to yourself, same question there.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said before, I'd be saying always be reviewing your inputs and your outputs of the system. Are they aligned with your strategy? And are you using the tools correctly to give you the answers? Something else that I did want to mention as well, that I didn't get a chance to mention in some of the other questions, is we shouldn't be wasting any of the finance team's time. We shouldn't be wasting any of their time. The tools are available to speed up these manual data entry. Anywhere that you're duplicating data entry is a complete no-no in today's world. Don't be wasting finance's time when we really need them to be analyzing and moving forward and making key decisions. And that includes things like including the finance team on any call in the business, which includes anything to do with numbers, just not necessarily necessary unless they're going to have input. So maybe giving them access into the system and viewing key reports means that they have those at their fingertips. They don't need you on the call just to be, for that 5 seconds of here's the report on screen for you guys to talk about. So that comes down to real-time information, giving access and having wide reach across the business. And all of this is available on cloud.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. And big takeaway there, don't waste finance team's time. Thank you for that. Great insight. Catherine, if I can come to yourself for your final comments there.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what's already been covered, adoption, evolving, really sort of challenging, how can things be better? How can things be different? Sometimes with that can become resistance to change. It's something to do over time, and ultimately involving the right people, both in the decisions of, what's going to be the solution and how we're going to, adopt that, how we're going to roll that out, how's that going to work for us. So, it's a process that needs to be taken, at a very sort of, detailed level of, making sure that the systems that are selected are going to be right for the business now, but also for the future as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's that piece around future proofing, isn't there? Are the systems going to be relevant in 1, 2, 3 years time?
Yeah,
are the market conditions still the same, or do we anticipate them to be the same in that time, and therefore is the system right?
Yeah, ultimately there's time and investment in any change. So, making sure that there's been a process, followed in respect of what the requirements are, really sort of understanding what are the key requirements. Because again, sometimes when you look at systems, you get a big long list of things you would like it to be able to do. But, ultimately sort of prioritizing and picking the ones that, that are ultimately going to help make that decision for the key stakeholders. I think that's really important.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. And certainly last but not least here, Sonia, from your perspective, any advice for the panel today?
Yeah, I just jotted 2 things down. I was just jotting some, I have 2 thoughts, maybe slightly more tactical in nature, but definitely from a chaser perspective, I would say cash recovery. So historically, a lot of businesses, they're quite sales driven, sales focused, and they put a lot of their efforts during tough times on getting new sales. But sometimes if you think about shifting that perspective and just getting paid for that you've already been done. So rather than hiring that new salesperson, thinking to get someone who can do credit control for you, or outsourcing your credit control or optimizing your credit control, that can actually have a really big impact on your cash flow. So definitely would be one piece of advice that I've given to some friends who are running businesses at this time. Sometimes net new sales are harder to come by than to get paid for work that's done, and just reducing the receivables in general. The second thing that I jotted down as I was thinking is an exercise that I actually went through last year. So it's just with regards to forecasting and planning your budget. And there's been a lot of talks with startup CEOs in the last months about forecasting to help you see kind of like business recovery. So my advice is to just forecast in a realistic way. So think realistically about the level of sales you can actually expect in this environment, rather than, setting these incredibly impossible to achieve stretch targets and budgeting across that. So just sit down, work out precisely what you think the outgoings of your business are also going to be, and try your best to predict any cash flow problems that can come in front of you. And so that would be my my non-financial, I guess, tactical advice.
Fantastic. No, that's great insight, Sonia, and thank you for that. That's brilliant. Good stuff. So that's all the questions that I had today, but I can see in the Q&A box there's a number of questions that have been raised in here. So I'm going to start asking a few of these and getting some responses on the panel, or from the panel, should I say, now. James, first questions for yourself here. You said you recommend frequently looking at reports to clients. What sort of systems do you recommend to do this? Like many accounts, like Q clients, we are a multi-entity business and have struggled with setup on cloud reporting tools in the past.
Is this the one in from Nicholas, or have you got a different one in there, Chris?
It's a different one in there.
Yeah, sure. Just hit me with it again.
Yeah, no problem. It says you recommend looking at reports. What sort of systems or report systems do you recommend to do this? We've got multi-entity business. We're looking at reporting around multi-entity businesses, and have struggled with setting up on cloud reporting tools in the past. Could you recommend a tool that could help here?
Okay, so right, the basics come with right. So you can certainly be doing your reporting in system. It's always a tool that can be used. We have the report managers in there, and we have the pre-built dashboards which are just available to use straight away. Aside from that, an easy step to get away from or to start to manipulate these reports yourself is we have an Excel add-in which plugs into per entity and at a consolidated level as well. So you could see, you can extract out all of the raw data from individual companies and all of the data from the consolidated perspective as well. We also have an OData link, and that OData link is going to link into products like Power BI predominantly and like Tableau. Now, Power BI may be a tool that you need some training on, and maybe if you don't have a business analyst there or someone who's used it before, it may take a little bit of extra learning in order to use it. I believe there are outsourced services, so you could bring in a third party to help you with Power BI reporting. We ourselves, we're starting to create there are some starter packs that we are going to add into the system, which you will be able to initially run with and then start to tweak and change. So that could be a good entry into the world of Power BI. And I'll say it, I've learned a lot about Power BI through using YouTube. And as of some of our dev team, so the development team are all really smart guys that have gone on to learn about Power BI and then started to use it in product. But it's essentially, I'd say, start out with Excel tools. Everyone in finance knows how to use those, and then we can move on to some of like the purpose-built reporting tools like a Power BI.
Fantastic. And having used Power BI before in the past, James, I know the considerable extent you can get to there with in terms of detail. So great bit of insight there. Thank you. Thank you, James. A question for Catherine here. Catherine, the question is posed, what sort of timeline have you seen businesses take when transitioning to the cloud? Our systems are quite disjointed, which has caused issues for us during remote working, and we'd like to look at becoming fully cloud.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it can vary, obviously, depending on the existing system, what solution is effectively going to be potentially the right solution. So, through that whole process is going to be, a review of the existing landscape, looking at where data currently is, being transferred to what core systems are in place. I guess to some extent seeing what can be optimized in existing systems through to then understanding perhaps a wider gap analysis to then look at alternative solutions. So really getting to the detail of what those requirements are, looking for potentially alternative solutions, going through a proper process to help inform that selection through to, obviously, depending on what that outcome is through a process of mainly a phased process of which elements are you going to look at first to change and to optimize to move that landscape. We work with businesses that are a bit more straightforward, that can be done in weeks, months, and then we work with larger businesses that can take a longer period of time to transform, and with all of this change takes time. So structuring it in such a way that it is phased is a good way to approach the transformation. Hopefully that made sense.
No, perfect. No, that's awesome. Thank you, Catherine. And question for Mark here: why did you choose Accounts IQ as part of your digital transformation over a different system?
Why did we choose Accounts IQ? We looked at a mid-tier product in the cloud. That was our objective. We looked at some competitor products. But I think, Accounts IQ, it was an established product that, was developing. It looks at a period it's going to be developing in the future, which is what I've seen as well. I think, a good reputation is recommended by, our institute. And yeah, I was, when we went through the demos, it sort of, it seemed to be able to offer us a lot of value to sort of things that we're doing manually now, and processes that, were not automated really. We can see a lot of sort of quick wins really. So yeah.
Super. Thank you, Mark. And just again, another question for you, Mark, here. It sounds like you've implemented a lot of digital changes over the past few months. Was it easy to get your team on board with all these changes? I think this point's been referred to quite a bit today in terms of making sure there's that level of awareness across the board within the team. Were they receptive to these changes or hesitant initially? How do you find it at New Statesman?
Yeah, well, it was quite fortunate in a sense, because we could help manage that change, because we was in a position we had to force to change, because we had to move into a cloud structure for the business, and we had a sister sort of related group who supported some of our requirements for systems. But yeah, there was a human sort of resistance to change there. We had to sort of overcome that. But I think one of the key things for me is it's really important that it's not a time to sort of do things on a cheap really. So we invested in resources for the project. We had a project manager, because being in situations in the past where you just overload people in the team, it's quite an onerous sort of transition. So yeah, we sort of made sure there was adequate resource to make it a positive journey for all the people who contribute to the process.
Fantastic. And it's that embedment. Anything new is always going to be a change, I guess, within any business, but ultimately showing the long-term or mid-term kind of benefits out of using it. You've articulated really well today, Mark, is where the value will be found. And I guess similar question for yourself, Catherine. How do you get buy-in from your clients' teams on using new systems? I guess if you're working with a client and you're talking about a new system or process in place there that may be completely alien to them, how do you kind of articulate that and get the points across when you're engaging?
I think involvement is sort of key. The right people in the right room at the right time. And awareness, as Mark said, is key. Really sort of helping to evaluate and demonstrate that the system will do what they're hoping it can do. Where the benefits are going to come from, the time savings. It's ultimately the way that we sometimes position this is, initially it might take a little bit of time to get used to the change. In respect of enablement on any system is take the time to make sure that people are adequately trained on the system, that they feel comfortable using the system, and obviously over time that will improve and increase, so that whole efficiencies will gain over time. But there is an investment of time to understand what the system needs to be able to do and what those inputs are going to be and what those processes are going to be, because like I said before, it isn't just say the system, it's processes around the system within the finance function ultimately need to change as well.
Absolutely. And another question here, Catherine. So this is from Tapas in the chat box here. He says, moving to cloud-based systems for SMEs, many SMEs have shown resistance due to security concerns. How have you tackled this with those types of businesses as well?
Depending on the solution, obviously that's key around sort of the security. There's information that we tap into through through that selection process, working with the business and also the solution providers to understand what that security landscape looks like. A lot of the systems are updating in respect of how the systems are accessed, dual authentication, the systems that we generally work with on a regular basis. We do an assessment internally in respect of it, because obviously we're accessing the system as well, and from a client data protection perspective, that's something that we take very seriously in respect of cloud-based applications. You know, if I point to Accounts IQ and James there, that's something we would have gone through with Accounts IQ, based on the fact that we use the product, and you know, we also implement the product for clients as well. So I think it's just about helping to understand what's in place and being really clear about what that means for the business.
Absolutely, no, makes perfect sense. And I think from a security perspective, obviously, we look at the kind of 20 or so years of cloud in place. I think you know, every single organization is fully focused around security there, and it's a good opportunity to sit down, I guess, with clients and work through it. They've got these concerns, to show them the measures that each of the ISVs have got in place to support security challenges. Fantastic question for Sonia here. A couple of questions actually in one, so I'll just read this out for you, Sonia. Do you do debt collection only in the UK, or are these also for clients who are based outside the UK? And final part here is, what do you mean by sensitivity, which you mentioned in handling clients who are not paying?
Okay, so I'll answer first with regards to debt collection only in the UK. So really at the present time, we are only offering debt recovery in the UK, but we are right now, off the back of a lot of customer requests, researching and looking at carrying out our debt collection service outside of the UK. But it's not something that we're necessarily promoting yet, as we're just kind of navigating the space. The rules and regulations are different for each country, so we need to tread that territory quite carefully. But if you have you know, a specific interest in this and you need our help, the best course of action now would be to set up a call with us, or I can email you after the session to pass and potentially just understand what your needs are, and you know, we'd be happy to look for a way that we can help. In terms of sensitivity, so that's there's a few elements to that. It's obviously treating our clients with dignity at all costs. We're not accusing them of not payments. We're not accusing them of anything. We always assume the best. It could be something as simple as miscommunications or emails going into the spam filter sometimes with regards to payments. So we really deal with that in the most sensitive way possible in that sense. And we will work with our clients and understand how they want us to deal with it. But obviously, from our brand perspective at Chaser, we'll never put our own reputation as well at risk. So we'll refuse to do anything in a harsh way. We assume potentially sometimes there are businesses who just struggle to pay. So I think the best example, because you say if there's an example, there's one example that I can think of, and that kind of set up one of our features that we're in the midst of releasing, which is the payment plans. I won't name the customer for now, but they were really struggling with a business who owed them quite a significant amount. So what we did is we facilitated and helped them work out a payment plan between themselves and their customer, and we kind of acted as a mediator throughout that time. So we'd be looking to do stuff like that, and really just look for mutually beneficial agreements and wins between the two customers. And that's how we would approach it, and which is different, I guess, from traditional debt collection agencies who might just want to see a payment and get that, you know, that commission. And that's just not how we work. Absolutely,
yeah. It's a clear divide between going in heavy, super heavy, versus that mediation, as you said, Sonia. So that's great insight. Wonderful. And I'm just cognizant of time, but I'd like to ask this last question. So this is a question from Nicholas here, and it says, probably a question for James and Catherine. If an organization has a fairly old, clunky finance system whereby a full overhaul would be the best way forward, but with a lack of funds / resources to commit to a full finance system overhaul, what approaches or other ideas would you recommend? And I guess let me come to James first, if that's okay, on that one there.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to hear your approach on it as well, Catherine, afterwards. But I mean, if we're working on like a group perspective here, we can have it's like a tiered approach to Accounts IQ. It's something that we're used to, getting some sort of like a proof of concept build. That's healthy for us, and it's work that we do with clients. We have, say, like some 10 company groups that start out with one. They maybe prove to the board, see if we can push for more software budget, and look to expand out from there. The difficulty is when we're weighing up, old clunky systems versus the cost of them. What is the cost of not knowing your position? An example of that could be we have actuals versus budgets, and then we have purchase commitments that we're not aware of. So, what does that affect? How does that affect our cash flow? Is it really useful if it doesn't include all of the aspects of the picture? So really, we need actuals, budgets, purchase commitments, and then I could be thinking, right, what impact does that have on my cash flow? So we get a realistic idea of that. But really, these cloud systems like Accounts IQ start to automate as much as possible, along with giving you the answers. So, yeah, Catherine, what's your perspective on it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I suppose in respect of, the cloud technology that's available now, particularly around sort of core accounting systems, but obviously it varies in respect of the functionality that's available within the sort of core product, and whether that needs further scaling with additional add-on applications, for example. They are relatively sort of cost effective on a subscription basis. So, from an initial outlay, an investment, that they can be more cost effective, but obviously that it very much varies based on the business, and what that requirement is, how many entities there are, what additional functionality is required, and it's on a case-by-case basis. In respect of the existing system, you're sort of weighing up the cost of maintaining that system, over time, because things like, upgrades and, continuing to be compliant, they're quite restrictive things when you look at sort of older systems, being able to adapt and change, and those are the things that effectively can hold finance teams back. I speak to finance teams that say, we'd love to change the way that we're doing things, but at the moment the systems just will not allow us to really change how we operate. So, it's definitely an opportunity, but again, it's whether there's anything that can be done in respect of the existing system to optimize it as much as possible, or to consider more cost-effective, sort of lower investment type solutions if they are applicable in the circumstances.
Fantastic. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, James, for your responses on that one there. I think, Nicholas, what we'll do, we'll reach out to you after the session today and come back to you. Maybe it's worth a further kind of discussion in terms of your specific requirements there going forward. But listen, everybody, I'm conscious of time. It's run to 12:05, and there's been a bunch of really great questions in there. But we'll probably pull the session to a conclusion today. Just on behalf of myself, I want to thank Catherine, Mark, James, and Sonia for responding to the questions today. Some brilliant insights in terms of both their own and their clients' real life true examples. There's a message just popped up from Gurpreet here. Thank you all, very insightful, which is brilliant. So thank you, Gurpreet. I've certainly found it very useful today. And again, big thank you to the panel. We'll reach out to everybody in the next 24 hours with a recording of this webinar. So you've got it to access to re-record if you've missed any. But I think that's it for today. Again, thank you to everybody for joining, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.